So tonight, I'm going to speak about the final, the 10th Pāramī. Pāramī means, the English word paramount comes from it. It's means high. And the Pāramīs are these high qualities, these beautiful qualities of the heart mind that the Buddha had perfected. He had them in their fullness and their completeness within his character. And the final one is this Pali word Upekkhā. And it's often, usually translated in English to equanimity. And we get the word equal from this, equanimity. It actually, the minity is mind. So it's an equal mind. It's an even mind, a balanced mind. And I just want to put equanimity in within the Buddha's teachings. It's a very, very, very important quality, and I'm going to try and sell it tonight to everybody, because sometimes it's not really, people don't think it's very juicy or exciting, but it is. It's the best. So just to show you how important it is in the Buddha's teachings, and I won't spend long on this, but there is this idea of this evenness of mind, this balance of mind that is got this aspect of completion, this aspect of culmination. So equanimity comes at the end of many really important lists that the Buddha gives us. And the first one is in Pali, it's called the Brahma viharas. And in English, a very good English translation is the divine abidings, like living like the gods, living with a heart and mind that is very, very full and peaceful. And there's 4 of them. And I'll just say in English, benevolence or acceptance, and then this idea of empathy, of care for people that are suffering in some way, and then sympathetic joy, resonating with other people's successes, other people's happinesses, finding great joy in that, which is a revolutionary emotion. We can tend to do that for our good friends, maybe, or for our children, but to think about, it's the quickest road to an uplifted mind, like, oh, I didn't get the promotion, but Zachary did. And then you're very excited for Zachary. That's this sympathetic joy. And then the final one is this Upekkhā, this evenness, this balance of mind. And these are the 4 emotions that the Buddha says are worth us cultivating. They're worth having. They're noble. They're wonderful. And equanimity is also the final of the awakening factors. And there are 7, I won't go into them, but just the idea that it's the culmination. It's as things have really, really developed in the heart mind. And it's also the hallmark quality of the 4th jhana, the deepest absorption, a very, very deep state of meditation. It is the hallmark. So tonight, I told you I really want to sell you on equanimity. And so I'll talk tonight first about, like, what is it? And then secondly, about how do we go about cultivating it. So what is equanimity? I've already referred to this idea of balance, this idea of evenness of mind. And equanimity is the Pali word Upekkhā could literally be translated as upa, over, and Upekkhā, looking on. So it's this idea of having a great deal of perspective, having a lot of perspective, having the big picture. So you think about, the difference between being in the traffic jam and in the heat and in the exhaust and in the stop go, or being, on a mountaintop looking down at the city and seeing all these little cars. This is the Upekkhā view, the one that's seeing from a distance. And there's another Pali phrase in the scriptures that is also referring to this quality. It's tatra majja tata, tatra majja tata, and that is literally translated as tatra is that, and majja is center or middle, and tata is to stand. So like really to stand in the center, stand in the middle. So this is another image that we can use. That you can think of the teeter-totter of life, all the ups and downs of life. And when you have a lot of equanimity, you're right in the middle. You're right in the center of that. And it turns out you don't go up and down nearly so much. The Buddha says that there are these 8 worldly winds, these things that this is life, no avoiding it. We're going to have, this is going to happen for all of us. We're going to have pleasure and pain. There are these 4 pairs, and they're really describing the teeter-totter. The pleasure's here and the pain is here. And then fame and disrepute, gain and loss, and praise and blame. These are things that are not avoidable. And this is just reality. And if there's a lot of equanimity in the mind, then we're just not nearly as affected. The Buddha's given us 2 similes. They're very, very powerful. And the first one is the simile for patience. Equanimity, this balance of mind, this being able to be in the eye of the storm, to be in the center, is very imbued with wisdom that has this bigger picture, and it's also imbued with patience. But it's a little bit different than patience. And the Buddha's given us these 2 similes to demonstrate that. The simile the Buddha gives us for patience is that it's like the great earth that is unmoved when refuge is how do you say it? Garbage. Thank you. Garbage. when yucky stuff is put on it, the great earth is unmoved. I mean, it doesn't really know, right? Like, actually, it does know, but that's another topic. And it's very interesting. The simile the Buddha's given us for Upekkhā is just like the great earth that is unmoved when both garbage and beautiful things are put on it. And this is the key to equanimity. We all know that we need to develop patience and forbearance and endurance for the tough parts of life. But to realize, we actually also need to develop a very even keel, a balance of mind for the great things in life. This is where I want to try and sell you. It's a high virtue, and we often don't really understand it. the world, you know, is going around and around and around on drama. It's operating on these ups and downs, ups and downs. But the Buddha is saying that there's a way to cultivate enough wisdom, enough patience, enough perspective that you're not, you know, just jerked around. You're not up and down, up and down, up and down with all of this drama. Gandhi once was asked what did he think about Western civilization, and he said he thought it was a really good idea. and I think this demonstrates this you know, this drama that we are all caught up in. And in fact, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, they all spoke very highly of this quality of mind. And of course, we're not hearing about it because we live in such a capitalist consumer culture, you know, that just it operates on greed and fear and passion. But the Buddha is saying that we can do so much better. That the balance and the evenness of mind is so much more satisfying, so much more meaningful, so much more delicious than the excitement of going to the carnival. The having peace, so much more important and so much more valuable. You know, I think sometimes if we're really honest and think back on our lives, lots of times, you know, things will pop into mind that are real highlights, you know, like the birth of a child or a wedding or you know, some very exciting concert. But then if we're really honest and think, but then there was also that time I was camping, and then there was a fire, or I was by a stream and I was by myself. I was on a beach and there was a sunset. Or I was, you know, we can think of those times that we were just okay. Everything was fine. It wasn't exciting, but it was lovely. It was so unexpected. This is equanimity. There's a really great Zen story of many of you, some of you might very well know it, and I might get it wrong, but you'll get the gist. You know, there's a farmer, and this is equanimity. The farmer had equanimity. So there's a farmer, and he has these 3 horses, and they escape, and all his neighbors and the villagers are like, oh, too bad, too bad. You know, it's like, maybe. And then a couple of days later, the 3 horses return with a whole bunch of other horses, a whole bunch of friends. And now the farmer has, you know, 10 horses. And then his son is all excited and starts riding these wild horses and gets thrown off and breaks his leg. And the neighbors and the villagers, oh, too bad, too bad. And the farmer's like, maybe yes, maybe no. And then shortly thereafter, the war breaks out, and they come through to get all the young men to, there's that other word, conscribe them. Is that how you'd say it? Conscribe them to be in the army. And of course, his son can't go because he's got a broken leg. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. I'll tell you another thing. If we look back on our lives, a lot of times, well, something seemed terrible as it was happening. And then when you get farther out and you get some perspective, it's like, actually, that was a real turning point in my life. That made all the difference, you know? So equanimity is holding out in the mind that we don't really know, actually. We have all these passions and ideas and expectations and wants, but they're really messing us up. And equanimity is standing back a little bit and trying to have a bigger picture and a much longer view, you know, not going up and down and up and down and up and down. No, steady, 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 steady. And really cultivating a deep sense of well-being and okayness inside. This is the invitation. This is what meditation is all about. It's about lots of things, but it's one of the things it's all about. Yeah. And equanimity, you know, this idea of damping down the passion, it doesn't mean that there's indifference or disengagement. The opposite. The opposite. You're steady. You're cool. Think about people that, if you've known anyone that has some of this natural quality of just being able to keep their head, you know, keep their temper. It's so valuable. It's like the emergency room doctor. You know, he's not disengaged, but she has equanimity, has equipoise, you know, balance, so they can actually make a huge difference. Equanimity, I keep saying, this bigger picture, and it's imbued with a tremendous amount of wisdom. Several people here know of Ajahn Sona. He's a monk in British Columbia, and he has a monastery called Birken. And actually, Sarah was a steward there for a couple of years. And Sanghamita has spent a lot of time at Birken, and a few others in the room have. And I remember being there one tea time, Ajahn Sona would be available, you know, to be with anyone that was visiting or staying at the monastery and answer questions. And somehow he got onto equanimity, and then he just did this riff that was so beautiful about this bigger picture and this coolness in the mind, and started describing it being kind of like the air traffic controller. And then he said, but you know, that there's a lot of warmth of the heart, you know, and care. Equanimity is related to metta. It's this benevolence and this acceptance. And so he's talking about the air traffic controller tower is actually on top of a bakery, and there's this, you know, wafting smells of freshly baked bread. This is a more accurate, more complete picture of this quality of mind, of equanimity. So how do we cultivate it? First, doing what we're doing tonight, and that is, I think, I know, hearing about it, learning about it, starting to value it. The Buddha is the greatest psychologist ever. And he is saying that the start of equanimity is this, is that you start to hear about it, and you start to understand how valuable it is. And you start to realize, you know, lots of times it can be difficult to even know what our culture is, because we're just in it. It's like thinking that we don't have an accent, you know. We can be like that about our culture, but our culture is not promoting equanimity at all, because sales would go down, you know, concert ticket sales would go down, movie ticket sales would go down, everything would go down. So equanimity is not being promoted in our culture. But to just take that step back and realize, you know, yes, this is my culture, but I don't have to go along with it completely, accept it completely. This is a choice. This is an option. Sometimes we don't even realize that. And that's the beginning of developing equanimity, of hearing about it, starting to understand it, and starting to really value it. This whole idea of balance, you think about balance for our bodies, balance physically, that's from the inner ear. And I don't know if anyone's ever had problems with their inner ear and had vertigo and had problems with balance. It's a terrible, terrible thing. You're nauseous, you're throwing up. Honestly, in the emotional realm, that's what we're like without equanimity. Equanimity is our inner ear for our emotional well-being. It's that important. Otherwise, we're emotionally seasick, and we're being jerked around by the media, jerked around by gossip, jerked around by our own minds. And so equanimity is an antidote to all of this. Yeah. And it's very, very okay to aspire to getting off the roller coaster. In fact, it's highly, highly advised. And sometimes we think, where would I be without my passions? Much better off. Much, much better off, because you don't at all like die inside. It's the opposite. You become more alive. You really do become more alive, more sensitive, more equipped to care and respond. Very, very important. I'm going to read part of a sutta. You'll get a flavor how the Buddha would speak. And this is how to cultivate equanimity. It's not really. I'm going to use it for how to cultivate equanimity, in getting a bigger picture, getting perspective. And this is from a collection of teachings that the Buddha gave. They often get called suttas or discourses, and this is the numerical discourses. And it's because the Buddha used, when he was teaching, he used one technique. He used was just to put things in groups, and so lots of times he grouped. Hey, there's two things that are really important I want you to remember. And that's not the way he talked, but and then three things and five. So this collection, there's a book of ones, a book of twos, a book of threes, a book of fours. And I'm going to read to you a part of a sutta from the book of fives. And the Buddha starts, monks, and it's a bit like this is a bit of a stretch, but a little bit like mankind, humankind, like everybody. Monks, there are these 5 situations that are unobtainable by an ascetic or a Brahmin, by a deva, that's like an angel, Mara, or Brahman. These are beings that are in all different levels of the cosmos, or by anyone in the world. What 5? That's why it's in the book of fives. There's 5 things. And this is one that's unobtainable, not just by us, but like by angels and gods and ghosts and spirits. May what is subject to old age not grow old. This is a situation that's unobtainable by an ascetic, by anyone. And number 2, may what is subject to illness not fall ill. This is a situation that's unobtainable. Number 3, may what is subject to death not die. This is a situation that is unobtainable. Number 4, may what is subject to destruction not be destroyed. Number 5, may what is subject to loss not be lost. This is a situation that is unobtainable. And then the Buddha goes on to describe that when these things happen, if somebody hasn't had exposure to wisdom teachings and hasn't really started to become reflective in their life, what happens is that, when something starts to get old, they sorrow, languish, lament, weep, beat their breast, and become confused. And we see this happen. Like, oh, I can't believe this happened. Why me? I remember I was out gardening when I was a lay person, and this woman in my neighborhood walked by, and she was for sure she was in her 70s, and it was just chit chat, like, oh, hey, lived in the same neighborhood. And how are you? Oh, she wasn't very well. It's like, oh, well, what's up? And oh, my mother died, her mother. Her mother was in her 90s, and she was so surprised. And I remember thinking that surprised me. She was surprised that her mother in her 90s died. Anyway, the Buddha is saying here, the answer is, monks, for the instructed noble disciple, what is subject to grow old grows old. And when this happens, they reflect thus: I'm not the only one for whom what is subject to old age grows old. For all beings that come and go, that pass away and undergo rebirth, what is subject to old age grows old. They reflect, like, this is just part of life. This is universal. So this is one way to be cultivating equanimity. And equanimity is very linked to reality, very linked to being realistic, that we're all going to get old. I went to get a bone density test today, and here I am saying, oh, the instructed and all this. I was like, and they did my height, and I'm not that old, but I've already lost like 3/4 of an inch. So anyway, of course I walked home like trying to be tall as possible, but no, this is part of life. Yes, I am shrinking, and and I didn't weigh very much either. And younger, I'd be like, oh, so great. And I'm like, no, bone density, no muscle, I just weigh barely anything. Anyway, okay, enough about me. Equanimity, such a fantastic quality. I hope you're more interested in it. I will just end with, we actually are drawing many of these teachings from this book about the Pāramī. And tonight's the last one. The culmination is equanimity. Very, very, very high, fabulous attitude, state of mind. And I'll just read. I'm going to read actually like a whole paragraph. This is by a monk named Ajahn Sucitto, and he's talking about how we could develop equanimity in our meditation. And I think it's very useful and practical. We can start to develop equanimity as self-acceptance. Cultivating this is one of the ongoing themes of Dhamma practice, Dhamma being the teachings of the Buddha. For example, in meditation, when painful memories or ugly mind states come up, we pause, set aside how things should be, and let go of trying to analyze or fix the mind. In checking those reactions without judging them, an even-minded empathy spreads over the mind. No need to struggle. I can be with this. And Ajahn Suchita writes, I like to define this process as having 3 stages. 1, pay attention. 2, meet what arises. And 3, include it all. That is, number 1, feel the thoughts, feelings and emotions as they are. Number 2, widen the focus to feel how they are affecting the body. And 3, let empathetic attention rest over the whole of it. Don't get busy and don't just wait for things to end. That isn't full inclusion. Instead, soften those attitudes and include it all, and let that process continue for whatever arises next. There will be a release, which might not be what you were expecting. However, through following that process, you begin to trust the effect of equanimous awareness. And that's the real turning point. Because when you have the tools, you get eager to include your whole life as Dhamma practice. You want to see where you get itchy and defensive, and you're on the lookout for the telltale signs of fluster and contraction. Because if you pay attention, widen, soften, and include it all, the movement to awakening continues. Equanimity is the big heart that can steadily hold feelings and perceptions in full awareness without getting rocked by them. And it strengthens into a mind state when it is supported by other Pāramī. Equanimity allows a feeling to enter, be fully felt, and pass. This is what makes it extremely useful. We don't dismiss the world, but get a heart that's big enough to embrace it all. So I'll end there and open it up. If anyone has any questions or comments or observations. And Scott, great. Let me just get people into the, how do I do this? There we go. Great. And here, Scott, if you can just grab the microphone.
I really liked what you said about our culture and our economy contributing to the teeter-totter.
Totally.
I see that in a lot of different places. 2 nights ago, the Oscars were held in Los Angeles, and that's $100 billion industry that's designed to yank our emotions up and down and all over the place. Well-produced movies can really grab our heartstrings, and the combination of what you see and what you hear for the soundtrack really elicits a lot of strong emotions. So it's and people love it, and people lap it up and continue to. Everybody likes a good movie, but I think sometimes we have to kind of back off a bit and realize that it's fantasy, it's not reality, and that to be a little more equanimous, is that a word? Would be the right approach when we look at art.
So, yeah, drama, yeah. Absolutely. All the song, yeah. Anyone else? Yes, Luke.
Well, hi. I'd have a, yeah, you can't really see me super well on the screen. Oh, yeah. So I actually had a couple questions. So first, I really like that line in the book where he says equanimity is self-acceptance. So like, obviously, I'm guessing that means like accepting yourself for who you are right now, as opposed to, you know, feeling like you're really, like pathetic or not worth it, or feeling really like high and mighty about yourself, like having in between where just like who you are right now, like that's who you are kind of thing. But does that also mean that you shouldn't pursue like growing or changing yourself at all?
That's a good question. I think, could everyone online hear that? Great. Yeah, I think that the accepting yourself where you are right now is absolutely critical. And again, you know, like Scott was talking about the movie industry, there's also the whole self-help industry and the diet industry and the exercise, people paying someone to coach them how to exercise. You know, these are huge businesses, which is all rooted in this improve. So I don't know how to. Sarah? Self-acceptance isn't complacency. In fact, I think, you know, research shows children are learning much more when they're having fun. So I just think that there's so many things that we don't understand very well. And so I think that, I think that's the issue with equanimity. I think that we're afraid if I just, you know, become really okay with everything, then I won't even brush my teeth, you know, and it's not like that. I just think that it's so foreign to us, the idea of just being absolutely okay. And fully aware of needs and correct responses. It's a real settling in and relaxing, and actually so much more good comes from that. Yeah, Roddy.
Please. I was just going to add, I think I heard from you and Sangamita a little while ago on this topic of self-acceptance and why change, or do we need to change? And I think it was a lot about just changing the wholesome qualities that you have. So if it's something that leads to more love, peace, compassion, then those are things we should be, you know, actively growing and cultivating and changing. But if it's, yeah, more money or greed and things like this, unwholesome qualities, that's what we want to avoid.
But the fact is that you're growing not at all from a sense of lack or a sense of insecurity. Like you're growing because it's really fun, and it's like actually just like attracts like. That's true. And it seems like, you know, either we're in a sort of a vicious cycle or a virtuous cycle, and it's a lot just comes down to who you're around and where you're inclining the mind. I don't think these are the greatest answers.
Can I add?
Yeah, please help.
Like, I think acceptance of self, when you find acceptance of self, like growth is automatic.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like,
that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, that growth and evolution is gonna happen.
Yeah.
Regardless, as soon as you
Yeah.
feel that self-acceptance.
Could you hear that online? Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you. Anyone online want to chime in? quieter than the meditation.
And I have a question.
Oh, great. Maybe actually, can we get that passed to Roddy? And Roddy, just hold it up and then.
Oh yeah, I can. Oh, you know what? I must. Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, we're on it. We're on it.
I don't really know how to word this question, but you were talking about those universal kind of polarities of having pain and feeling the dispute, and like trying to see both sides of the coin. I am fearful that that leads to like almost gaslighting yourself, of having a very negative experiences and then like forcing yourself to try and see the negative.
Great.
So how do I see both sides without gaslighting myself and rather walking in wisdom? If that makes sense.
Yeah. Very. Yeah. It's sort of gaslighting is saying, oh, that didn't really happen.
Well, it's not as bad as it actually is.
Yeah. It's like gaslighting is when you have an experience or you see something and then someone negates, diminishes it and twists it in some way, and then you end up like unsure of even what you're seeing. And I super appreciate that question, because the Buddha's teachings are not the power of positive thinking and pulling yourself up and just carrying on. It's not that at all. It's very much based in this idea of full self-acceptance. So something, you have an experience, you have an exchange with someone, or you have an experience and it's very difficult for you. I think the beginning of equanimity, it's not really equanimity, but the Buddha's teachings are instructing us to be very, very honest and real about how that was. And then you bring in the wisdom piece of, and do it with whatever you need to. Like my life hasn't always been like this. This is impermanent. You have to start though with accepting it the way it is and how it's feeling. And wow, I'm so disappointed, or whatever it is. Yeah. But the equanimity is bringing in just a much bigger picture and the universality of, because we can get so tunnel vision in our own little life, in our own little body, Yeah. But no, not talking yourself out of what you really feel. No, not at all. Accept what you really feel, and then it's I don't know your name.
My name is
Danny? Danny. Yeah, it's what Danny said. As soon as there's like true acceptance, everything starts to shift. It's wild.
I think that example or what you just said is really helpful for me, because in my head, like, I think you can also accept the very bad things, and that change happens from that might not be positive, but it's still change if necessary. So yeah.
And Donna, I know you couldn't hear that, sorry. Donna, you had your hand up. You're muted. You sound just like the other person in the room.
There's only me. Yes. No, I was just going to say, when I first started learning about Buddhism a few years ago and learned about the viharas and discovered equanimity, I thought, okay, that's my dream. That's what I want. So, yeah. And you've just made it it was an end goal. And what you've made me realize is that it's more of a process. Like I'm not always equanimous, but I'm not always not equanimous.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes we can actually even be equanimous with just where we're at. And that's not a bad thing. That might be the right one. Brilliant. Thank you so much. One thing I forgot to do. Right. Okay, we're actually at time. So I'm just going to, we're going to end with this very, very beautiful meditation. It's short and it just gives a sense. And this is pretty much directly from the suttas, directly the Buddha's instructions with a little bit of an Ajahn Sona tweak. But in meditation, and it talks about pervading, like filling, and it talks about 1/4, and then the second quarter. So you can think in front, to the right, behind, to the left, 1/4, like just all around you. Because the Buddha would talk about this, about all. Sometimes he would talk about 6 directions. Sometimes he'd talk about 10 directions. So, and this is it's a beautiful description of equanimity. So just see what happens in the heart and in the body as we hear these words. I will abide, pervading 1/4 of the field of experience with the feeling of equanimity. Then the second quarter, the third, and the fourth, above, below, around, pervading the entire field with a bigger view, including myself and all other beings. I will abide in this dwelling, a kindness that is abundant, exalted, immeasurable, a blessing that is without any trace of resistance to that which is beyond control. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And thank you everyone so much for your interest in the Buddha's teachings, and may you have a great week of practice, and see you again, perhaps.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much.